One day each of us will close our eyes for the final time. Our hearts will slowly cease to beat, and our last breath will whisper through silent lips as we leave this existence behind. Yet is this truly the end? Do we simply cease to be as the last spark races from our brains along cooling neurons to its final destination in oblivion? Or does the part of us that is uniquely our own continue beyond the grave? Is there existence beyond the temporal? And if so, what mysteries might that existence hold? There are those who would have us believe that our lives end with our final tomorrow, that the physical world is both our beginning and ultimate end. There are also those who reject this explanation, instead contending that the physical world is simply one aspect of an existence which may stretch on through eternity. For now, we are left to wonder if the strange apparitions are a product of our feverish minds, or if ghosts do haunt the fringes of the material world. The ultimate truth may lie somewhere between, unknown to us until we each pass beyond that veil. And between our searching eyes and that veil lies a path that leads us to the shadows of legend. Today, we have local man Dan Rice that's going to speak to us about some strange occurrences that he's experienced. How are you doing this evening, Mr. Rice?
I'm doing well. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good so far. Now, you say that you've had some strange experiences that defy description?
I suppose I have. I mean, just very odd occurrences that really can't be explained away by any kind of common sense or logic that I know of. So I guess that would qualify as, if you want to call them supernatural, that's fine. If you want to call it imagination, that's fine. But, I saw what I saw.
Right. And now, did these occurrences all happen around the same place, or was it at different locations?
Really, some occurred around the same place, but generally speaking, they were in different locations. There may have been more than one occurrence in the same place, but different locations.
Okay. Well, why don't you start by sharing one of these experiences with us?
I suppose the first one will be many years ago, I guess. So it's been probably 15 years ago or better. I used to live in Catlettsburg, right on the Big Sandy River. I used to joke and tell people from out of state that I would game with that I could hit a baseball and it would land in West Virginia. That was that close to the river. And so anyway, right there at the junction of the Ohio and the Big Sandy, the confluence of the two rivers. And it's long been a Native American belief that anytime two or more bodies of water come together, then it's a sign of great power. And as luck would have it, the area that I like to fish there was you had, a quarter of a mile upstream, you had the two rivers joining, but right there where I like to fish, there was also a local creek that emptied into the Big Sandy. And it was plenty of place for fish to feed and all that. It was a pretty good little fishing hole. Well, one evening, a friend of mine and I were out there, and we were fishing. And which was not uncommon. We would take our lanterns, go down there, fish at night. Many times we'd done it and never, ever, had there been an incident before. However, on this one particular evening, we were down there, and usually when we got this, we had caught a few fish here and there. I mean, we weren't exactly slaying them, but we'd caught a few. And the next thing you know, I just felt this feeling more than anything. It wasn't physical. It was just this overwhelming feeling of just oppressive, almost like doom. And so I'm no longer comfortable in an area which usually I'd be just as comfortable there as I would be sitting in my living room. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? This is not cool. Well, I also noticed that a lot of the banter and whatnot that usually would be associated with me and this guy fishing together had stopped. He was being really quiet too. Now, with us, usually the first one to suggest that we, pack it in for the evening would be subject to beratement, being teased and ridiculed for being a lightweight or, insert insult of your choice. But I remember I'd had enough. I was like, okay, I'm just not digging this. And so I remember I reeled in my line. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I reeled in my line and I said, "You about done?" He said, "Yeah, I am."
No discussion,
so he
no
reeled
disagreement,
in.
right?
No, not even the first hint of disagreement. Not even the first, you big baby, you big girl. The fish are still biting. Blah blah blah. Hen pecks. None of that. He was just like, "Yes, I am." Okay. And so we both reeled in, grabbed our equipment, and we had to walk back, through a wooded area. It was a couple 100 yards long or wide, I guess, to get to the base of the levee and then up and over to the house. And so as we're walking, though, I could just feel this presence, I guess, gloom, doom, whatever. And it was like our lanterns were only illuminating an area around us, which I know that's what a lantern does, but if you've ever walked in the woods with a lantern or a flashlight, especially a lantern, it will emit light around you in a 360-degree radius.
Exactly. Yes.
And it'll be fairly bright right around the light, but as you start getting as you start getting out a few feet, then it starts casting shadows, and then eventually it will fade into darkness. But it was almost like we were in a cylinder, instead of going horizontal, it was vertical. And it was like the light was only going to go so far, and that's it. But it was casting no shadows, and it made for a very awkward trip out of there because, again, when you got that little bit of ambient light when you're walking out, you can get a better idea of any type of deadfalls or weeds or thickets or whatnot that's in your way.
Exactly.
And we didn't have that.
Now, if you don't care if I interrupt you here in just a second, now during this, a lot of people with paranormal experiences, they report the absence of wildlife noises. Did you notice the absence of any other noise, or were you too focused on what you were doing at the time?
Well, to be honest with you, it's been quiet all night down there. And then usually down there you'll hear, frogs.
Yes.
Birds, night birds, that sort of thing. And it was just unusually quiet. As a matter of fact, I recall that just about anything and everything that was going on across the river, Canoga Way, it was echoing across that water. But, there wasn't a whole lot of wildlife sounds, not even crickets and whatnot. It was kind of quiet. And maybe that is what initially brought on that whole feeling, because not hearing that and being so used to hearing it when you're out and about.
Right, because
I don't know.
You've been an outdoors person your entire life, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
it wasn't until recently I stopped going outdoors.
Okay.
That's merely for health reasons, but so something was just not right, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And, we made it out of there, but it was almost to the verge that I felt like I was going to panic for a moment because I could not get out of that dark fast enough. And it's like once we popped out of that tree line onto the levee, the bottom of the levee, and as you may or may not know, the Catlettsburg levee, once you get to the bottom of it, it's just a grass hill. All it is. It's a pretty steep hill, but
yes,
it's just a grass hill. And once we got to the levee and got on top of it, then the street lights, were silhouetting things properly. And it was almost like, okay, everything was restored as it should be. But that was the first time I'd experienced something odd in that area.
Okay.
And then in that same area, it happened one night. We had a power outage for whatever reason. And my wife at the time and my kids had already gone to bed.
Yes.
I was the only one up. I was sitting there. And again, and I do not recall, honestly, if this was before or after the incident when we were fishing, but I know it was right around the same time frame, like within a few weeks of one another. Give or take, like I said, I don't recall which one was first.
Okay.
But again, my house, literally, you would step off my back deck onto the levee. It was that close. And so power failure, and I'm sitting there, and I've got a fishing lantern, matter of fact, and I'm sitting there reading in the dark, simply because at that time I worked midnight, so I was up for the duration anyway. And so, okay, so I'm sitting there and I'm reading, and I felt that same feeling. So I had been after. I thought, well, I don't know, but anyway, I felt that same feeling I felt that night I was fishing. That creeping, whatever it is, doom, gloom, despair, darkness, whatever. I felt it, and it was like it was starting at the very back of my house. And it's just a little. Our house was a little small, single story structure, but it was like it was starting at the back of the house and creeping its way forward.
So it was moving. It didn't just come on suddenly. It actually moved.
No, it didn't come on sudden. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. There was no apparitions, none of that.
Okay.
But here comes that darkness. But I could literally see the shadows, the ambient light just fading away from my lantern. Mm. One could say maybe your batteries are dying. Well, yes, I suppose you could. But you know, even if the batteries are dying, that light's just going to get weaker. It's not going to cut off the way that did.
Okay. Yeah, it's not going to change its shape of projection.
Right. And so as it got closer and closer, and then finally it got to there was a threshold between the dining room and the living room where I was sitting, and that whole space was open. But right as it got to that threshold, then the power kicked on, and it was kind of like just letting the air out of the balloon. It was gone as soon as the power came on.
So there's
now, like I said, I don't know if it was my mind playing tricks on me, overactive imagination. I don't know, but I do know what I felt. And like you said, having been someone who's grew up outdoors.
Right.
You know, played in the woods as a kid, day and night. Had never once, and still don't today, have any compulsion or any problem whatsoever, you know, to go outside at night into the woods even. Doesn't bother me a bit. The only thing now I worry about is I'll walk and get around as good as I used to, so not being able to see is kind of a problem. But
yes, I can understand that.
But no. Still, that was odd, you know, for two incidents like that to stick out of my mind. Just very, very odd.
And it was in the same general area, at least.
Oh, within an eighth of a mile of one another.
I see. You don't think that this was targeted directly towards you, or?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a little bit of an historian. And, you know, there's a little bit of history in that area. I don't know how much of it is folklore, how much of it is truth, how much of it is embellished truth, you know. But I do know that there was a Union Army camp there during the Civil War, with a Confederate prisoner of war camp being directly across the river on Virginia Point. Most people don't realize it's called Virginia Point because at one time it was the most western point in the state of Virginia, because when the war broke out, that was not West Virginia yet. That was all Virginia still.
Okay.
But anyway, they had held Confederate prisoners there. The Union garrison was here. I mean, there was even a racetrack, a horse racing track down there at one time in that area. And then, of course, the whole Native American thing with the bodies of water and all that.
Right. And
there were supposed to have been some atrocities committed to some Native Americans. There were supposed to have been some African Americans that were mistreated and killed in that area, you know, many, many years ago during segregation and Jim Crow and all that stuff. So who knows? I mean, really, who knows?
Given the nature of what you described, do you think that it was focused? Do you think there was an intellect behind it, or do you think it was just an area of effect type of thing?
You know, I don't know. No, I don't think that there was like any. I don't know if there was. You know, do I feel like there was one? You know, grand potentate, if you will, back there pulling the strings? No.
Okay.
But I do feel like that it was centralized to that area for whatever reason. You know, some folks say that a lot of this supernatural, paranormal activity, what have you, is nothing more than, you know, energy that remains left over from something that happened years ago.
This is true. There is a school of thought that believes that things are recorded.
Mm-hmm. And the fact of the matter is that, historian or no, especially with Catlettsburg at one time was a very, very busy river town. That's why it was called Gate City. It used to be known as the Gateway to the West. It was even more prestigious than St. Louis at one time. We're talking many years ago. It was.
Yes.
So, being a town like that, or trading post or area like that, it's hard to say what type of misfortune people had met in that area,
Well, river towns were notoriously rough, we'll say, and crime could be rampant and was very seldom prosecuted.
Yeah, I guess that was the point I was trying to make, is that, especially back then, a river town was very rough. It was not uncommon for people to wake up with their throats cut or be found in the river or hither and yon, and usually meeting a very, very untimely, nasty death. So, who's to say what may have transpired in that small area?
Yeah, I have to ask, have you felt that type of experience, that type of energy in any other place that you've visited, like hunted or fished or anything like that?
I kind of felt it once. I had hung around with a group, a paranormal group for a while, and we did a couple of, I won't say investigations, but we went to a few places just to see what we could see, feel what we could feel.
We'd say sort of like field research.
Yeah, that would be a fair assessment. And we went out to there in Ashland to the old Potter cemeteries there in Ashland, and it was not until we reached because that, as I recall, this has probably been 9-10 years ago when I did this. It was not until that cemetery is basically, it's on a hill, and there's basically three tiers to this cemetery. And it wasn't until we reached the upper tiers, which consequently was the oldest part of the cemetery, that I kind of got a hint of that feeling once before, but it quickly subsided because I don't know why. I felt the same exact feeling and felt it dissipate that quickly when doing an investigation on another cemetery in the Ironton area that was very old. Initially, there was that feeling, and it just dissipated. But one of the people in our group had suggested that's because once we entered their territory, they put their defenses up. But then once they realized that we meant no harm, we were not there to face anything, to file anything, to ridicule or anything. We were just there to try to learn that it was okay. You're fine. I don't know if there's any validity to that, but
it's a possibility, definitely. And depending upon who you might ask and which person that is doing the research, they've discovered different things, and they have different belief systems on how to go about this, we'll say. Now, to clarify for people who might not be familiar with the area, Ashland and Catlettsburg are adjacent to each other, and they're both in the state of Kentucky, whereas Ironton is across the river in the state of Ohio.
All that tri-state area. I mean, you could almost make the claim that Ashland and Catlettsburg actually are adjacent. They do one runs into the other. And the whole Ironton, Ohio to, even as far up as Huntington, West Virginia, it's really one sprawling little town after another. So, yes, it is rural, but it's small town America pretty much all along that river.
And there's a wealth of cemeteries all along the area that you just pointed out.
There is. And you have to remember, too, that also at that Virginia Point place that I talked about, because I know I've referenced three different states, that point was, where the three states came together right there in the forks of that river was where Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia came together.
Exactly. Yes.
So, there's a three-state area here, or a part of a three-state area here that, is not exactly urban, not exactly completely rural, but it is populated. Just like when you're going down the road, Old Country Road, and you see the sign that says dense area.
Right. Yes.
That's kind of sort of what you're looking at. So there are people here. There's not an overabundance of them.
Right. And these people in this area all have a tendency to have a familial relation because families move back and forth across the borders here to find jobs and housing and things of that nature.
Yes. And, in a small town like this, or a small area like this, I won't go so far as to say in the area that we just described, everybody knows everybody like they would maybe say in the town of Catlettsburg. But it is really odd that everybody pretty much knows what everybody else is into. I don't know how to put that exactly. I mean, I wouldn't know exactly that maybe Charlie is writing for the paper and he drinks coffee and he, work on cars in his spare time. I know this because I know Charlie personally.
Right, yes.
But other people would know, prime example, Charlie, your dad. A lot of people didn't know to what extreme or what kind of guy your dad was, but everyone knew who Coffee Man was.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. So stories and information travels. And on that note, have you talked to anyone else that's experienced things similar to what you just listed for us?
I have. There was a group that I had, like I said, that I hung out with. Ashland man by the name of Phil Queen, and matter of fact, Quill, excuse me. I've been reading a lot of science fiction lately. Phil, he wanted me to, because I've known Phil for a while, and he wanted me to start going out with him and hanging out with him, and I'm looking at the people's credentials and whatnot, and I've really brought nothing to the table other than a little bit of history and an open mind. But I asked him, I said, Phil, why me? I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just curious, for lack of a better word, what skill set do you think I have? He goes, oh, none. He goes, you also heard the bravest man I know. And if you get spooked, I know it's time to go.
So your skill set is not being flustered easily, correct?
Yeah, my skill set is being soft between the ears and not knowing what's good for me. But, yeah. But, there was him, and then the lady, Kelly, who runs she's got a little Celtic magic curio shop over at Meade Station called New Avalon, and I went on a couple of probes, tours, investigations, what have you, with her, and she's good people, and I would contact her, and I will kind of sort of cross paths every now and again, every few years. My work that I had for the longest time had me traveling all over the place. So I wasn't here for a bit of time, for some time. I even lived out of state. But so a lot of these people, I kind of, how it goes when you get older, you just drift in and out of contact with them. So
now, are there different types of experiences that you've had that still would fall under the paranormal or strange umbrella, for lack of a better way of putting it?
I think so. I think just about any wooded area is going to have some sort of Bigfoot legend. As you well know, the area of Straight Creek, it had its own variation of Bigfoot, the Straight Creek Monster. As a matter of fact, some friends of mine, he had an old Army Jeep, and we would load up in that thing at night and go up and traipse all through them woods at night in that Jeep on them old mining roads and whatnot, out back of Straight Creek. And I never thought it was any kind of, I never felt any kind of danger, any kind of presence there. it was just it was I think it was just a chance to get out and do stuff. You know, you're young, high time, fun. But there have been reports. People will tell stories, and you don't know if they're just tall tales they're repeating. Who knows? Who knows? But I do know that I've seen online, and again, it's on the internet, so it has to be true, right?
Yes.
But there's been people talking about they had seen things in the Hurricane Road area of Ashland, which the drive from Hurricane Road to Rush is about, I don't know, 25 minutes maybe.
Yeah, at most.
Depending on
traffic.
Yeah, but as the crow flies, it's really not that far.
No, it's not.
That's the other thing around here when when people talk about those good old Kentucky roads on a straight stretch at sight. That is true because the good old Kentucky shortcut. I know a shortcut around the mountain. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So you drive 10 miles to go to. By the time you drive around everything.
Yes. Exactly.
So again, who knows? Because just as we explained earlier about our area having a rule, just as we had talked about having a condensed area right along the river, which we do. For as much as that is, it is very rural once you get, a couple of miles away from the rivers in any real direction, except for maybe, up Huntington way. But you quickly go into a very rural, very wooded area. It's possible if someone who didn't really know anything about being in the woods or anything, they could wander around there for quite a while in a small area and, think they were completely, totally somewhere like in the Pacific Northwest. But because you can get in there deep enough in some of these places that you will not hear a road or signs of civilization, I guess.
Now, you mentioned hills and wooded areas, and you mentioned Rush earlier. Now, if you don't care for the listeners here, how long would you say the road is from one end of Rush Hill to the other?
From one end of Rush Hill to from top to bottom, or
from the foot on one side to the foot on the other side of the hill?
The road itself? Oh, Lord. It's been a while since I've been out Rush Hill, but I would say it's probably a good 4 mile.
And how many houses are on that road from between the foot of the hill on one side and the foot of the hill on the other side?
As far as I know, I don't think there's any. There might be one or two, but I don't think so.
And there is, however, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a logging road on the top, the peak of the hill, correct? That goes back into other hills.
Oh, there's those logging roads and mining roads all over the place around here.
So,
and more so even now with the four-wheelers out there running with this Rush off-road thing, it's hard telling what trails and roads they have now. But back, I know what you're getting at. And back in the day when you and I were younger men,
yes,
I think there was that one logging road, maybe an old mine road or something, but that was about it.
So these are actually isolated areas butted up against small population centers of 2 or 3 dozen, essentially. That would be, do you think it'd be an accurate description?
Oh yeah, especially in Rush, the holler that I live in.
Yes.
You've got for example, the road that I live on runs from not quite Interstate 64 all the way into way deep into Carter County into a little place called Denton.
Yes.
And that's about 30 or 40 miles, okay? And as a crow flies, it's probably 20-some or better. Matter of fact, there was an old railroad that ran from there to Greenup, Kentucky. And as I recall, that railway was like 46 miles long, but and railways generally try to run as straight as they can. Greenup's a little further up the river than 64, but at any rate, the point I'm making is, it's fairly congested along the road going up the holler, all the way to Denton, and then you'll have, of course, you'll have county roads and whatnot that will branch off from this road, and they'll have people on them. But those roads can be half a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles apart, and then you might have a holler here and there that a family has, inherited, moved in, owned, whatever, and there might be 3 or 4 families living back up in that holler. But the point I'm making is, in that 25-mile stretch, it's just like you said, you'll have a little cluster of people here and there, and the rest of it is woods.
So in your opinion, knowing the woods, would it be possible for a very large creature to hide?
It's possible. And I'll tell you why. For the longest time, people said there were no bears around here. Now, they'd hunted out, gone, ran off, what have you. Now, DNR, Department of Natural Resources, never did, to my knowledge, release bears back into the wild in this area. Okay? But here within the last 10 years, there's been bear sightings all over the place. Now, granted, the bears we're talking about are black bears. They're a little bit bigger than a large dog.
Yeah, we're not talking about grizzly bears. But
no.
Now, you talked about the connection between the 3 states here. And some of these black bears were reported to have migrated back in from West Virginia.
Okay.
So there has to be a path. There has to be a way for them to make it through here.
Oh, there is. I'm not going to say that they go right down Route 60, but again, being a local historian, the old Route 60, US 60, the old Highway 60, actually followed an old buffalo trail. And so, like I've seen, there's not going to be a parade of bears walking down the highway, but the land is more conducive for overland travel. I mean, animals are, they're going to take the easiest path they can take, the easiest, safest path they can take. So yeah, there's definitely a corridor for them to come down and move out and about. And there could be a great deal of validity to that with the bears migrating over from West Virginia. There really could be. And I think part of that would have to do with a lot of people here in the last 20 years or so. They don't do outside like they used to. We've become a society that is very tethered to our creature comforts, if you will. Some people, if they don't have internet service or Wi-Fi, they start getting a twitch in their eye, not knowing what to do.
So do you think that might be conducive to people seeing a bear and thinking they've saw some sort of cryptid, like, Bigfoot or the Straight Creek Monster or what have you? Do you think that's a possibility?
It could be. I mean, again, if there's less people out there tromping around in your territory, and let's say that you are an elusive creature, and make no mistake, bears are elusive. Yes, we all the time, we've all seen the videos on Facebook and whatnot of the bear, getting in the guy's hot tub or getting in the trash. They will do that if they're hungry, and they have an incredible sense of smell and blah, blah, blah. But by and large, a bear, you could have a bear within, 100 yards of you if you're in the woods and never know it. He will smell you long before, depending on which way the wind's blowing, but he will smell you and detect you long before you ever do him. And he usually just silently moves away because to him, it's just not worth the confrontation unless you're threatening something, a food source or a young one or something like that. The bear don't care what you do. He's just going to wander off.
Well, they are considered an apex predator. They have no natural prey. So, natural predators.
Right. They're just going to whatever. And bear's just going to take off. Bear doesn't care. But the point I'm making is that if there's less people out there romping around, they would expand their territory. It only makes sense.
Well, it would, yes, because more is available to them.
They do like to roam,
Yeah, yes, they're you could say a migratory creature.
Right.
Now, stepping away from the woods and from the issues of possible cryptids and things of that nature, were there other strange occurrences that you've experienced in your life? I'm sure there have been.
memory fades over time. As a matter of fact, in thinking about this and researching this, I can recall bits and pieces of incidences, but I don't know enough to really relay anything. I do know that there's a mutual friend of ours that had made a reference to something about me and a Bible verse. And she remembers it plain as day, and I vaguely remember it. I think the incident happened out there at Silver Run, but I'm not sure. That'd be most likely, but I don't recall it. And I think part of it, too, is when you see stuff like that and when you notice it, okay, it's almost like if you're talking to someone and you're telling them a story or you're trying to explain something or what have you, and when you can see that they're actively listening, you will keep going. You'll continue your story. You'll continue your explanation, whatever. But if you can see the signs that they're not listening, they may not even be actively ignoring you. They're just being polite, acknowledging you, or maybe they're not even acknowledging you. But you can tell they're not listening. You generally tend to stop talking.
Well, this is true, yes.
I think in the nature world is the same way. I think that once you stop listening, it stops talking.
That's an interesting way to look at it. It is.
Why waste your breath? And so, but when you start seeing things and noticing things that are out of normal to most people, sometimes they become commonplace to you because they're not that over the top. I've never seen a full apparition, like in the classic movies or like they're so fond of high-fiving themselves over in these television shows and whatnot. I've never seen anything like that, but I do think that over time you do desensitize is not the proper word. It's just, I don't know, it just becomes part of the scenery, and you go on. And part of that is, I think, over time that you will inadvertently stop listening, so they will, in response, stop talking. It's just one of those. I won't say it's just one of those circle things. What comes around goes around, kind of sort of thing. Not so much karma, just life.
So now, what would you say to people? I mean, I'm not trying to pin you down in either direction here, but what would you say to people who did believe in supernatural and who didn't believe in the supernatural?
To the people that do believe in supernatural, I would tell you that not every strange occurrence is supernatural. They call it a strange occurrence for a reason. I've heard where instances where people would live in an old house. Not so much these days anymore. It's not an issue, but, when we were growing up, it was not uncommon to hear, pipes banging in the middle of the night for no reason. Well, what people didn't realize is that that's actually an effect called water hammer. You will get air, or in some cases, if it's a hot water line, if it gets hot enough, steam in a line. And when that water hits a turn in that pipe, it'll bang. And it'll actually create the sound like somebody tapping or banging on a pipe. That's just water hammer. Okay. Houses will creak and settle. I mean, even the newer ones, even the more modern ones. Temperature, things expand, contract with heat and cold, and houses will settle and they will creak. Older ones just do it more because they've been creaking longer. It's almost like a human body. When you're young and you stand up, it's no big deal. When I was 20 years old, if I stood up off the recliner, I got up and went. Now, when I stand up off the recliner, it sounds like a bowl of Rice Krispies. I'm just older than that creaking pop. And a house is the same way.
And that, as they say, is life, yes.
Yeah. But, so you hear these things. That doesn't necessarily make it supernatural. There could be a very, very plausible explanation. And honestly, usually there is. If you look hard enough. It's just whether or not, if you want to look hard enough. If you're even concerned about it to look hard enough. So those are to the people that I would say believe not everything is paranormal. Now, to the ones that don't believe, I would tell you this, that, the human race, they like to think that they know everything. They really do. But the fact of the matter is we don't. there are so many things that there's still so many things that we can't explain. Diseases, social conventions, oh Lord, the list goes on and on. We can't explain it. Sometimes we don't even know what causes it. Hell, sometimes we don't even really know what it is. But we like to think we do. Humans like to label everything and be able to put it in the box, so they can take it out and look at it and examine it and go, oh, okay, that's that, and then put it away. But it don't work that way. So I would tell you, keep an open mind, because someone or something might be trying to talk to you, and if you're not listening, they're going to quit.
That's true.
Just keep an open mind.
Well, thank you for talking to us today and taking time out of your day. And at this, I think we'll wrap up this session, and you have a good evening.
You too, sir. I appreciate you, and you have a good day yourself.
Thank you. This is Charles Romans, and on behalf of myself and our guests, thank you for joining us on this walk through the shadows of legend. If you like what you heard, please follow us and visit our website at shadowsoflegend.com and support our Patreon page to help keep the content flowing. And if you would like to be a guest and share your own brush with a stranger paranormal, don't hesitate to email us and include a contact number. The strange and surreal, the normal and the paranormal are all aspects of the world in which we live. As you reflect upon the stories we have shared, keep in mind that the people sharing these stories are actual, real people just like us. Were the stories shared compelling enough to be given credibility, or should they be relegated to the deeper part of the shadows? But when determining this, it might be a good idea to keep an open mind, because when we look around, we might discover that our own world is less brightly lit than we once thought. Until next time, I'll be waiting for you in the shadows of legend.